For wrestling diehards only, this is the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. My name is Brandon Bainey, joined tonight by Al Fontes, the sharpest dressed guy in wrestling coverage out there.
T-shirt and hat.
Yeah, you look good. We've also got Jacob back in the house. Hey, what's up, Jacob? How you doing?
Good. How's it going?
I'm doing great. And then Brian Zollinger, usually joins us. He's been gone the past couple of weeks. He is actually at a duel tonight. And so he said he would try to hop on if his duel got over. And so that'll be a pleasant surprise if we get Brian. But for now, it's just the three of us. And so here we are, ready to break down everything again. Thanks to everybody that's tuning in. We usually do this on Tuesday nights. We had to move it to Wednesday because I had one of those darn basketball games last night. Rockland, Grace Lutheran, little Bulldog Pride. They end up getting the win there in boys hoops. But this should be the last one, I think. Every week from here on out should be Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. We always go live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. As you're sitting here tonight and you're checking out the action, if you're on Facebook, please hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds. Give it a like. That'll help everybody who comes back the next day or even later tonight that can't be here live and they want to view it down the line. The more likes we get, the more shares we get, the easier it is for everybody to find it the next day and amongst everything that's going on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, hit that like button and share it. If you're watching on Twitter, go ahead and retweet this. And if you are watching on YouTube, I know we got a couple of YouTube diehards out there. Please hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel. It all helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And then as you're watching tonight and you want to jump into the conversation, you've got a question for one of us, you've got something you want us to talk about, a certain athlete, certain school you want to give a shout out to, throw it in the comments. We'll throw it up and talk about it. This is your show, you the fans. We want you guys and gals to dictate where the conversation goes. So if you're watching tonight, maybe drop in your name and where you're watching from too. That always helps out. So let's get into it, guys. We usually start the show with the best thing that we saw from the last week. So Al, I'll go to you first. What was the best thing that you saw from the past week in wrestling?
I just at the Rollie Lane, I saw some really good finals matches. One at with Aaron Coulter and Matthew Martino. It was just a high-level display of great wrestling. In the end, Martino won, but it was a really highly contested match. It was great to see that level of competition.
Jacob, what was the best thing you saw from the past week?
I'm going to go to the McPherson and Bear Lake because I know this is going to be heavy Raleigh talk. Firth, Gage Vasquez versus Tucker Bowen. I think 4 state finals appearances by both of them. Tucker Bowen ends up beating him. Could be 2A 120 state championship match. Happened at Bear Lake, so going with that one.
You're right. The competitions at Bear Lake kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but there was some good action there for sure. The best thing I saw was Rollie Lane, and we'll get to Rollie Lane in more depth. But to me, the big story was Cadence Beck from Grangeville going down to Rollie Lane, competing exceptionally well, coming away with the title, and really, we've talked about her storyline quite a bit here on the Mat Chat Prepcast over the past several weeks. But again, just to continue that legacy of what her father, Andrew Beck, started and built, just phenomenal story, I thought, from the weekend. We got a couple of comments already so far tonight. Alfonso, the master of the multitask. He's watching Jacob's nephew at Thunder Ridge competing tonight. And let's start with this, guys, before we get into Rollie Lane proper. Christopher Glasscock wants to know, how about that duel? Meridian versus South Fremont. This was kind of the appetizer to what was going to be a pretty epic weekend of wrestling, Jacob. What did you think of the 5A versus 3A battle?
One, it was, just the atmosphere is crazy. No matter what, you watched it live. on Flow, on one of the, South Fremont or the Meridian page. That's good for Idaho. But I mean, I don't think many thought South would go in there and beat them. You knew it'd be competitive, but you didn't think they would actually, win. And so, and it was, they pinned 95 through heavy to close the duel out. It shows that, South's more for real than I guess even they get credit for, which is, they're back to back to back. So it's going to be really hard to beat them.
Al, what do you think about South Fremont going and slaying the giant 5A Meridian?
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend both the coaching staff at Meridian as well as South Fremont for putting this dual meet together. It creates a lot of interest. It's great for the sport of wrestling. Great Idaho, brings a lot of attention to the sport. It's what we want to see. Like I said, I had Meridian favored, and I think I said it's going to come down to a bonus point, which was a pennant in. I believe it was locked up 24-24 going into the finals match. The one variable I didn't know looking at both lineups was who was going to have the power to adjust kids up the weight. And it seemed like South Fremont had some ability to adjust some of their kids in the upper weight, which changed the dynamic of the dual meet at the end. So I really think it can go either way. But once again, great for South Fremont and Meridian for putting something like this on. I think it should be the norm moving forward that we try to do this every year.
Yeah, because Meridian is the one that's got nothing to gain and everything to lose, right? We see this in other sports where the bigger school takes on the smaller school, because if Meridian wins, hey, congrats, you're the big bad 5A, you're supposed to win. And if you lose, then it's like, oh man, what's going on? But I like that the Meridian coaching staff had enough confidence in their guys to say, hey, we don't care. The 3A is just a number and a letter next to South Fremont's name. South Fremont as an opponent is going to give us a good test. And so I love it. And I'm with you, Al. I would love to see this more. I would love to see, like New Plymouth battle, Columbia, or, Ryrie take on Thunder Ridge, because in the dual lineup, especially the dual format, it can be more even, right? If you go to a tournament, typically Meridian's going to pile up more points than South Fremont usually because of depth and things like that. But in dual, anything can happen. So I kind of like it. I like the way. And
another thing to think about too is that even though they're 3A, 2A, a lot of these kids, these top level programs are putting year round. They're working in the off season. So these kids are wrestling on the national team too. So whether they're 3A, 4A, they still have the same training regimen as a Meridian or what. And they have access to about the same type of training. So, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And what South's been doing this, I mean, that group of kids probably started wrestling together when they were 6-7 years old, in the barn.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So, I mean, they've been wrestling for 10 years together, 11 and a half months out of the year. And even when they're not wrestling, they're playing football together, they're playing baseball together. There's a lot of, closeness up there. And so the whole lineup, I think South has 2 All-Americans at Fargo. And then you have Hobbs, he won Iowa. It showed, they have a lot of guys that can wrestle at the next level.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Christopher agrees. There should be more of these. It was just great. Morgan Simmons says South was so underrated. They surprised a lot of people. I think so. I think statewide, this really was an eye opener for a lot of people, especially Al, where you're at in the Treasure Valley. Sometimes it's easy for Treasure Valley teams to get wrapped up in just what's going on in the Valley, not necessarily what's going on statewide. So I think especially over in that Boise metro area, this was like big eye opener. So I know all my South Fremont fans are in the chat tonight. Where's everybody else at? Usually we got some Cuno, we got some Middleton. I want to know where everybody's watching tonight from. Another comment here about South. Colby Clark is really hitting another level. So yeah. Oh, and hey, look who pops in here. Brian, what's up, Brian?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey, good to see you.
I was listening until I could get here. Stuck out a duel.
Hey, no, that's all right. What'd you see tonight?
We had Bonneville Skyline, and it wasn't done when I left. So, but Bonneville's pretty good. They top 5 in the state for sure, 4A, and so the outcome really isn't in doubt.
Right. So you were listening to the conversation. We're talking a little bit about South Fremont Wrestling and how they took on Meridian in this epic duel. Morgan says those Clark boys were amazing, and I'd agree, Brian. What'd you think about South going up to Meridian and knocking them out?
Everything you guys have said already. I mean, the atmosphere, to have that gym packed. I mean, what a great opportunity. And then, when Meridian was up in the 30s, I thought, it's, they're in trouble. And then when they hit right after Hobbs, you had the first Clark brother. Colby just gets the fall against Gooley. I mean, that was really the turning point in the duel to me, is when Colby Clark got that pin, and then his brother comes up next and gets the fall and the heavyweight. I mean, it was impressive, and it was electric, and I agree completely. Idaho needs more of that. It was a lot of fun. And, there were some matches, the Simmons match that went to overtime, a couple that could have went either way. So, I mean, I'd love to see them duel again. I'd love to see Minico. Minico beat South the week before, which is, it's crazy. And to the point that maybe we should have a dual state tournament and a bracketed tournament, because it's fun.
Yeah, and we talked about that idea on a previous episode. That was going to be the next thing I pivoted to, guys, because David and Michaela reminding everybody that Minico topped South Fremont. Al, do we use the transitive property here? Does that mean Minico can beat Meridian?
No, it depends on how they match up. I mean, like I said, when I looked at both South Fremont and Meridian, the numbers crunching was so close that it came down to bonus points, right? No one expected Goulier to get pinned. No one expected some of those pins, but that was the turning point, like you said, right there. Minico has depth, so they have so many extra kids. I think they have like 17 or 18 kids ranked in the state right now. That's huge. So they have a lot of kids that they can just around. So, yeah, they may be tough to beat, but I'd love to see that match too.
Yeah, that would be a phenomenal battle to see for sure. Okay, Al, speaking of number crunching, we were talking a little bit before we hopped on live tonight, and you had crunched some of the numbers from Rollie Lane this past weekend. I'm going to let you have the floor. What did you discover when you went inside the numbers?
So these are just raw numbers. So if you look at total placers, 15 weight groups, top 6, 61 of the placers came from Idaho, which is about 68%. Of those numbers, 47 were state placers in Idaho, returning state placers, which includes the champions as well. 8 were Idaho state qualifiers, and then 6 placers from Idaho were either incoming freshmen or they were state qualifiers last year. So as far as the 5A, 4A, 3A, of the placers, about 33%, a third of them were from the 5A, 21, about 23% were from the 4A. 3A had about 7 placers, and then 2A had 3. But they only set so many teams, so a majority of the teams were 5A and 4A. As far as out-of-state placers, 29 of all the placers were from out of state, about almost a third. But only a small percentage of them were state placers, about 7 or 8 of them. And then if I looked at how many kids were All-Americans at Fargo, folk-style nationals, etc., some form of about 18, almost 18 to 20 kids had that status placed at the nationals. So overall, it was a pretty solid tournament. As far as the girls, it was about the same.
Yeah, speaking of the girls, I wanted to give a special shout out to Alyssa Randalls from Coeur d'Alene. She becomes the first 4-time women's champion in the history of Rollie Lane, and I believe only the 4th overall 4-time champion at Rollie Lane. Ridge Lovett from Post Falls, Michael Cook from Cuna, 2011 to 14. And then Casey George of Lewiston, and that's it. And then Alyssa Randalls. That is rare company, Jacob. What a great performance.
I mean,
yeah, she looked pretty good. And I think there was another girl that I think she won her third title. I think it was in the lightweights. I have to go back and look. I think Cadence Specs, this was her first title. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Real quick comment here from Chelsea Brown. Good freshman, yes, and her Taylor Brown, of course, is Chelsea's, and she's fun to watch too. And then I wanted to mention of those 4-time champions, Brian, that I mentioned. 3 of the 4 in the history are from the North. Lewiston, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene. What's that say?
Yeah, the North is tough. I mean, Post Falls has been great for years. Lewiston's put out some great wrestlers. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And
I believe the 3-timer was from Zimmerman from Moscow. I think she won her 3rd title.
I think
top of my head. She looked pretty solid.
Yep, Zimmerman, and she committed to Southern Oregon.
Go Raiders.
To wrestle last week as well. And I wanted to pivot to the conversation about the North because we're getting some of those wrestling fans from up north. Reminder, everybody, as you're here watching tonight, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this, retweet it, wherever you're at. It really helps us out down the line. Cade Sessions says his favorite storyline for him out of Rollie Lane is Jose Laguna. He's got one of the great names in wrestling, Jose Laguna from Post Falls. Does he go 170 or 182? I assume he's talking about in the future.
170s. He wrestled Hudson Rogers in the semis, and it was a tight match. Came down to the wire, but he won that match at 170s. He wrestled Corden League from Highland in the finals.
Yeah.
And whether he stays there, because he's been most of the season at 82, and that's the thing with Rollie. So many. I mean, there were a dozen kids at least, and solid kids that cut down a weight class. So, it'll be interesting to see what he does. The 3-day state tournament, that's going to be a challenge for some of those kids cutting a lot. So the guess is 82, but
he looked big, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, my son had him and he definitely looked big, and he's a solid kid, obviously, to beat Rogers, who is, one of the best in the state. Laguna is he is legit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, Jacob, because what do you think? Do you think 182 is the way Laguna should go moving forward, or 170?
Like Brian said, it's a 3-day weigh-in or a 3-day state tournament. It's super hard to make weight that whole time. I would like him to go 170. That was a good match in the semis. Went to overtime. That's good for wrestling. When I looked at it, I was waiting for somebody to ask who's the best performer from Rollie, and nobody probably picked Jose Laguna to win 170, honestly. So he was my go-to, and then he looked good. I watched that match overtime, hits a high crotch to win it, and it was just another day for him. He was like, oh, okay. It was a big one though, So I bet he goes 182, but
I'd put him up to 180s. If you look at Meridian Post Falls at Rollie, Meridian had 8 placers with 3 champions. Post Falls had, I believe, 6 with 3 champions. But if you look at state rankings, they're pretty close in the number of kids. I think Post Falls has 10 kids ranked. Jacob, 3 of them are number 1, and then Meridian has just a little bit of depth. They have 14 with 6 kids number 1. So they're going to have to try to get it to where they could possibly get the most state champions. It's going to come down to wire with those teams. So come state.
There's a few kids Post Fall, like Hamilton at 45 right there. He could be ranked. He could also make the finals. He wrestled, I don't even remember what match I was watching. He wrestled him so tough for 2.5 periods, and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a good backup to have.
Yeah. And we have to look at Nampa too, because they weren't 100% there. A portion of their team went to Doc Buchanan in California at the Clovis. And I think in the team scores, they were 10th. But if you put Expert and a few of those, Navarro, and I think Gunter, if you put that in the lineup at the Rollie Lane, they're right up there in the top 3 or 4, possibly. So come state, we can't take them for got to watch them closely because they can be right there in the thick. They have the numbers too. They got about 12 kids ranked. 3 of them are number 1. So we can't count them out.
It's going to be an interesting team race down the line, that's for sure. Troy hopping in the chat. Twait, Merrill, White, Skellinger really impressed me. They wrestled. Good job to all who wrestled at Rollie, and I would agree. I'm gonna throw a question out to you guys, but also everybody that's watching in the chat tonight, because I tried to find this info and I couldn't. But speaking of Mr. Hamilton from Post Falls, he wants to know what South teams will be at River City Duels this weekend. That's the Post Falls hosted event that's coming up north this weekend. Do you guys know any off the top of your head? And maybe fans in the chat can let us know if your team's headed up there.
Rocky's going, and I think Meridian's going from what I know. That's all I know for sure.
Thunder Ridge, probably Pokey. I don't know what else.
It's pretty good. So if you're a fan of a team in the chat and you are headed to River City Duels, let us know. Alfonso says, yep, Thunder Ridge. You're spot on there, Jacob. All right.
I mean, they've got 30 teams up there from Idaho: Timberline, Thunder Ridge, Rocky Mountain, Priest River, Post Falls, Nampa, Mountain View, Meridian, Lewiston, Lakeland, Kellogg, Capitol, Bonners Ferry, and Blackfoot. So that's a lot of Idaho teams.
Blackfoot. I like it. That's okay. That's a long journey. Okay. That should be a really good competition this weekend. Raylene wants us to talk about the 235 girls. Go Minico. Jacob, what do you think?
I'll pull up the bracket real fast from Raleigh. I have it ready.
That's all right. This is the fun part. I'm assuming Raylene is from Minico. And everybody that's watching tonight, when you hop on, let us know where you're watching from. Give your favorite school a shout out. That's what we want to do here. We want to bring all these great fan bases together. I'm surprised we haven't heard from our good friend H.A. Havas yet from Lewiston. He's always hopping on here.
But boy, that's looked good. It did.
So I saw 235s at Raleigh in the girls division. Amy Hartman, who took second at state last year at Mountain Home, she beat Olivia Woods, who's a 3-time state champion. And then Rocky Mountain has a new Reese Moody. She's new to the sport. She's a rugby player, and she placed third. And then the gal Alexandra Wright from Emmett, and then Emery Wood. There's the Wood sisters. There's 3 of them, and she took 6th. It was a pretty competitive weight, 235s. So no guarantees who's going to win state right now.
No, I was looking at the updated individual rankings, and again, you can find that right at the top of the homepage on IdahoSports.com, individual and team rankings. And there was a lot of movement in some of those weight classes on the girls' side, which to me says it's pretty wide open competition wise. So that's always good to see. You mentioned the Woods Eagle girls ended up winning the team title on the girls' side. Meridian boys won the team title at Rollie Lane. Daniel, go ahead, Jacob.
Did Eagle girls win it without a champ? No champs and still won Raleigh, right?
Eagle did not have a champ in the girls.
Yeah. So that's a lot of depth for them. A lot of placing to win Raleigh with nobody.
Handful of girls in the finals, which is big points. So that made the difference.
Yeah,
I think the Wood sisters wrestled each other in the semis.
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of our, I think that was the case.
Yeah. So you had Reese Woods at 185, Olivia Woods 235, both made the finals. So that's that 235 we were talking about, and then Jordan LeBeau at 165 also made the finals for Eagle. So Daniel on YouTube says, hats off to the teams that crossed the north-south divide. Hard to travel, cut weight, bunk up in a hotel, and perform top-notch. Brian, what do you think about that? That's something we haven't explored too much, but it is hard when you're in a hotel and you're out of your routine a little bit, right?
Absolutely. And it's hard to cut weight on a 10-hour bus ride too. So that's, hats of props to them for doing it. And it's a long day. I mean, probably roll in Thursday night, have a hotel room. Some of them get to the Idaho Center and get a warm up that Thursday that's open, and early weigh-ins. And then that's a long day if you're cutting any weight. You weigh in at 7 a.m. rather than the typical 3:30. So it's good prep for state because they're holding their weight down a full day. But yeah, that's a tough travel.
And we got to add it's finals time too. So these kids, academically, it's very demanding to be able to manage that time management of wrestling, academics, and just regular life. So
yes,
it's a tough time.
Yeah, that balance. You're right, Alan. We've got so many high-powered academians that wrestle as well. And that's, you can't go D1 without the academics and all the D1 wrestlers we've seen. I mean, they've got the scholastics to back it up for sure. JJ Belton says, agreed. I'm not sure what she's agreeing to. I'm going to assume it's everything we've said up until this point tonight. And JJ, where are you watching from tonight? Let's see. She says, Gentry Smith, Post Falls coming on strong, tough kid. I'm assuming you're a Post Falls fan. Let's talk about Gentry Smith a little bit, Jacob. Where does he stack up in that 5A mix?
Top 3 at 95. I believe that's where he's at. 195. Because there's Gooley. I think Smith's number 2 right there, and then there's one more in there. I mean, they all trade wins, trade losses, trade tough matches. So they're not far, and you got Reardon, the magic maker. So everybody better.
That one's going to be fun to watch too. I mean, the finals match was Gooley and Smith, and Smith got him, in the finals match, and so that's going to be a fun rematch at the state tournament to watch Gooley and Smith go at it, because that was a fun match. I mean, it was great. I think Gentry caught him and pinned him in the second, but I mean, it was a battle until that happened.
Yep, for sure. Let's see. One more from JJ here. She says, agreed about the Laguna comment. Okay. That he's got the best name in wrestling. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's check in on Buhl. Melody wants us to give a little shout out to Buhl. Of course, they hosted the Buhl Invite over the weekend, and pretty much the premier 3A teams were all there competing against one another. Here's a good tidbit from Amy. She's one of our great Buhl fans. She says Buhl did the same weight allowance as Rollie Lane and had 2 semifinalists not make the second weigh-in. Oh, that's crushing now.
Yeah.
That's tough.
One was Banta at 6. Missed.
Yeah.
I don't think it was because of he's too big. I think he probably something else played a part.
They're
Probably
kids.
Too many Uncrustables.
Yeah. Yeah, too many Uncrustables. Yeah.
This is one of the dynamics of how a team's going to perform at state is those 3 weigh-ins, adjusting kids, making 3 weigh-ins, the pressure of winning critical matches. So that's why I say there's going to be a few variables that, we can almost estimate one team's going to win, but that third team, you just don't know.
Yep, for sure. Here is Easton Banta. We don't need to talk about the second win. That's right. It's in the rearview mirror. We're already moving on to the next comment. Let's hop in here. Speaking of that, Alfonso wants to know, how will these kids that lost tough matches rebound? Some of those will take it as fuel, right? Brian, this can go one of 2 ways, right? It can fuel you to get better, or sometimes, it does cause you. We all want to say we're mentally strong, but sometimes those self-doubt does creep in, and it just kind of compounds on each other, right?
Yep. I mean, with teenage athletes, confidence is a big deal, and you hope most of them bounce back and rededicate and get to work. But it's tough to say. I mean, once a kid beats a kid a few times, it's sometimes in their head. So you hope they get back to work, and I think most of them will. That's what's great about this sport and the good coaches that we have throughout the state. They're going to get those kids back in the room and use that as fuel. So I think that's kind of what we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Hudson Rogers lose. It was a tight match, could have gone either way. I mean, we can talk in depth what he should have done and what happened. It doesn't matter. But I can guarantee, I mean, he was in the passageway doing sprints, focusing, doing drills. I mean, he came out his next few matches and just tore it apart. So I think that's only going to fuel a kid like Hudson. So I don't think it'll happen again. With that match.
And this is important because so many state championships are so often won in the blood rounds, right? And you're coming off a tough setback, and how do you bounce back and how do you battle back? And so, yeah, it's super important stuff. Matt Biggs with a little comment here. I'd argue that may not be the state final at 195. We were talking about that a couple minutes ago. All right.
He could be right. His kid Cody is, an absolute beast, and he's right there. I mean, he barely lost to the kid from Nampa.
Chiloe.
Yeah, I mean, that was a close match there for 3rd and 4th, and he beat Grizzle from Mountain Home. I think he's been beaten Grizzle 3 times this season already. And so, Biggs is right in there. Him and Cancelo, he could be right. I mean, it could be those 2 in the finals. That's a tough weight. You got 4 kids right there. Gooley, Smith, Cancello, and Biggs, and Grizzle from Mountain Home's right in there too.
Yeah, for sure. One last comment on the weigh-ins. Chelsea says, weigh allowance sucks when you're tiny, but it's great when you're on that borderline, right? But like we said, it's great for the regular season, but then that security blanket's not there when you get to the postseason, Jacob. So it is kind of that double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of these high school kids would rather be able to eat those Uncrustables a little bit. Manage it. It's easier to manage your weight and wrestle at a high level when you don't gotta go ride bikes or those long bus trips. Like there's sides for it. You travel a long bus trip, but you're able to eat breakfast. You don't have to worry about getting a really hard sweat. Rather be a little bigger, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So this past week we had the Buhl Invite, we had the Rollie Lane Century, I believe, went down and won the Bear Lake tournament. Does that sound right? I think that's right. And then we did have some teams in North Idaho go over to the Gut Check over in Kent, Washington. I did want to give a shout out to Robert Storm from Lewiston.
Big Storm.
Big Agent Zero getting a big win there. And so again, we talked about the Gut Check being a really tough competition for the schools that decided to go over there and compete as well. So we can kind of pivot now to looking what's ahead this weekend. River City Duel, of course, at Post Falls. What else is on your guys' radar? And if you're in the chat, let me know where your team's headed this weekend too, and we can talk about the competition that's coming up. Al, you said so, and everybody that doesn't know, Al helps coach Rocky Mountain, so you're headed up to Post Falls.
The team's going to head up there. I'm going to go. We have the Jaybird tournament at Columbia, which is a girls tournament, and I think this year is the first time it's 2 days. Starts on Friday. So just since it began several years as in the trend of the women's wrestling growing, they expect a lot more girls this year. So it's going to be 2 days. So I'm going to go to that one, help out there, and yes, the varsity will be going up north.
Yes, yeah. Chelsea says she's going to be at the Jaybird. Justin Lineberry also going to be at the Jaybird, and it's really impressive to see how it's grown. Right? It's
exponentially growing.
Yeah,
I think I looked, and they've got 50 teams that are at least anticipating coming, which that's a big girls tournament, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
That's so awesome. Yeah, that's so great. Let's see.
I think there's Parma, Wendell.
Yes.
Those 2 tournaments.
Amy says, yeah. So real quick, sorry, Amy. Buhl Invite, great finals at 120, 160, 220, and 152. That was from last weekend. And again, kind of a precursor to maybe what we can expect at that 3A state tournament. Jed says he's going to be at the Madison Invite. Brian, what kind of competition are we going to see there in Rexburg?
That's a good tournament. I mean, mostly East Idaho schools, but I mean, South is there, obviously. Just about everybody from this side of the state is there. It looks like Blackfoot and Thunder Ridge go elsewhere, but it's going to be, they have a girls tournament there. It's a little obviously smaller than Jaybird, but it's going to be good competition. You get Sugar Salem, some of those cross matches we don't get to see with 3A, 4A, 5A teams. I'm trying to think if there's any 2A. I think Ryrie sometimes comes. And so, you get a good mix of different divisions. So it's a fun tournament because of that, and it's tough.
Yep. Let's see. Troy Hobbs says Star Valley, Wyoming will be at Madison. We don't talk much Wyoming wrestling here. Jacob, I know you grew up in Teton. You're kind of right there on that Wyoming border. Star Valley's over at Afton. What kind of program do they have historically?
Star Valley's probably the best team in Wyoming ever.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into that gym, I don't think they have space for banners anymore. If you've ever been in there, it's wrestling championships from 80, 81, 82, all the way probably to 2020. I'm pretty sure they won it last year, 2022 too. So,
yeah, and they produced Rulon Gardner. I mean, one of the great names. I mean, he went through Star Valley High School.
Did you hear he's coming back?
He was on our local radio today.
50-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yes, which is always amazing to me because Star Valley is so good in boys basketball too. It's like, and you would think those would compete against each other, but I don't know. They've got it in spades over there in Afton. Let's see. David and Michaela say Minico dueled Star Valley this season too. So, Minico's getting battle tested here. They're getting ready for, hopefully what they think is going to be a great showing at the 4A state tournament. Let's see. Jeremy says New Plymouth is going to be heading to Wendell. I'm assuming that Wendell Invite's going to be kind of those Treasure Valley, Magic Valley 2A, 3As competing.
I think it's
Jacob?
a big 2A. I
Big
know
2A
Soda
competition.
goes. Yeah. Soda Springs goes. A couple of those 2As.
Yep. Talking about that Minico Star Valley duel, Troy says Minico killed them. LOL. Understatement of the year. Here's John Blaisdell from Malad. Malad is heading to Wendell. Great preview for 2A and what to expect for the state tournament. Okay, so last week we kind of had our 3A semi preview in Buhl. This week 2A in Wendell is going to be action we're going to be watching very closely. Brian Skellinger says BK Bishop Kelly is going to head to the Rockwell Rumble in Utah. They just beat them at 80-6. Ooh, that's pretty impressive, Brian.
Yeah, BK looked tough.
Yeah. They are. I mean, they've got some absolute hammers on that team. And Rockwell Rumble is a tough tournament, years that Utah's up. So that's going to be fun to watch BK go there and watch Skellinger, Martino. I mean, that was one of the craziest matchups with, Martino's match with Coulter Burton was, one of the highlights of Rollie Lane. BK's hammers are hammers. So that's going to be fun to see how they do down there with Utah, with just about all the tough teams from Utah show up to the Rockwell Rumble. So that's going to be great.
I heard Clovis is going to be there too, and they're a top-notch California team. They did pretty good at the Doc B. I wanted to shout out to Mac Mauger. He placed third at Doc B, and Diedrich was sixth. That tournament had about 26 nationally ranked kids in the medal matches. It was pretty intense. Just to put it in perspective, Poway that won the Reno TOC with 8 placers, 4 champions at Doc B. They took 7th as a team and only had 4 placers and 1 champion, or I think maybe 1 finalist or something like that. So it just tells you the magnitude. So kudos to everyone that put it on the line there, even the kids that didn't place. Takes a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to be certain. And before we get to the weekend, Buhl is competing in a tri match tonight with Mountain Home and Twin Falls. And Amy says, Bowers back on the mat for Buhl tonight. All right.
Well, wait.
See.
That's a big question for Buhl. I think Buhl could beat South at the state tournament. I'm saying it now because they're going to be tough to beat at a lot of those weights. Like they should place at 13, 20, 26, 32, 38, 45, 52, 60, 95, 220. And they I mean, where's Ruiz going? Where are the Brunson brothers going? Where's Bowers fit in the lineup? Colin Robinson. They had a kid placed at 32. The JV kid placed 5th at 32. I think of his name when obviously I'm spacing it. But Buhl has the potential. I mean, after what South, kind of did in that tournament, South is the favorite, but Buhl wasn't far behind.
Yeah, it looks like
if you look at South Fremont, right, they have 12 kids ranked, 4 of them are number 1. So Buhl, it'll come down to how they perform that day.
Even at that tournament, you add Jace Bowers to that. There's another 20-30. I don't know what it finished, but at one point Buhl was down 20. Like, is Jace Bowers enough? Does the rest of the state pull South down or pull Buhl down? It could be interesting. If they space it right, it could be the upset of, it could be South knocking out Meridian, kind of like the same magnitude.
It'd be great for wrestling to see a close, just like Rary and New Plymouth last year.
Yes. What an epic battle that was. Amy says Jace is at 160 tonight. So, and then she says Fabi Pierce, 132, the freshman. That's who you were trying to think of there,
He took
Jacob.
5th. He beat Riker Simmons. Riker Simmons is 3-time state placer.
Yep.
Wow. It changes things a bit.
And then go ahead, Jacob.
No, I was going to say, with Buhl, Jace goes at 160. They already have, Ryder Sheen is the number 2 guy at 160 right now. So,
Yep.
and Jace is defending state champ. How do you not put some respect on that?
Yeah, you got to start looking at the districts and say, because district, they're all going to take 2 kids. And so the depth plays a big deal and how many they can sneak through in the district. Whose district is toughest at what weights? I mean, because if Buhl can get 30 kids to the state tournament or, 25 kids to the state tournament because of their depth, it could be a race.
Yeah.
Which I almost bet they do. It's going to be mid-20s for sure. It's just.
So I know we can send the top 2 in the District 3 for the 5A. So last year Meridian had 29 out of 30 make it. I can't remember how many Post Falls. Like you said, that's going to come down to those extra kids that winning matches. So
yeah, it's pretty impressive. 29 of 30. Jeremy from New Plymouth says we were talking about BK beating Emmett. He doesn't know if it's accurate, but he heard that Emmett's 6 points were on a forfeit. I'm not sure, but that would be interesting if it was. But and then Amy, a couple comments here. Sheen gave Gibson a run in the finals. And then she says, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. We brought back the individual and the state rankings this year. I wanted to throw this out here to talk about it. She says, 3A rankings, pretty messed up. Kid number 2 didn't even place at Buhl. And so here's what I would say to that. I would say that it's an inexact science. We're considering a lot of different factors here. Brian, we might have, and we've seen this in different weight classes where number 4 has beaten number 1, but also lost to 2, 3, and 5. So how do you rank that, right?
Yeah, you see it all the time. I mean, you really do. There's upsets in the sports. That's what makes this sport great. And we've talked about it before. The longer the season goes on, the more data we have. They get more accurate as things tighten up and get towards state. But it's great to have them back. I mean, I have so many conversations every week about and it's great the disagreements because anytime you're ranking kids, that's exactly how it's going to be. And you see one kid will win this tournament, another kid will win the tournament the next week, and it's all about those matchups. And so you're right, it's an inexact science, and it's getting better every week. And great to have it back. I think the wrestling family, they're all thrilled about having them back, and it's never going to be perfect.
I agree with you. I mean, right now it's like putting it on the board. You erase it, you change it, you adjust it. It's like trying to predict weather. Come state, when it's done, it's in stone. That's where it counts. Right now, it's just like figuring out weather. You're just trying to adjust and speculate based on what you know.
Yep.
Things change. It's all good. We love the input.
For sure. And Jacob, I know another tough point as we're trying to do this every week is the change in weight classes, right? The kid might wrestle at 180 one week and he's dropping down the next week. And so figuring out where to place everybody too can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah. I don't know. We talked about it a little bit is majority matches. If you wrestle 70% of your matches at 26 so far, all the data says you're a 26 pounder. You might've went down for Raleigh or, 2 other tournaments or just after the break, but with 1.5, one tournament and a duel in, you can't really be a 20 pounder or, you're a 26 pounder for a little more data, stuff like that. And it goes the same thing with ranking kids. 2 might've lost to an unknown, but unknown has 6 losses to kids that, all those other head-to-heads that number 2 has. And it happens, how 16-year-old kids, he might have had the sniffles or he might have had a bad day, he could have got a C-, in class, or there's all sorts of crazy stuff that happens as a 16-year-olds that, they stayed up till 2 a.m. playing video games. And, that I should not do that now. Or, the hotel stay. There's so much that goes into it. So.
You're right. Amy says
February.
Yeah, Amy says love the rankings, but this week it seemed like the Buhl results weren't entered. I'll tell you, we use the eye test, what we saw in person, and then we use track wrestling, of course, the great resource that it is, and we carefully consider everything. And Fred, I'll let Fred have the last word on this. Fred says if Buhl would figure out their lineup, the rankings would be easier.
Come on, coach.
That's a big part of it. Buhl would do that real quick. It'd be if Fred will go ahead and send in, to Idaho Sports the February lineup, then we'll do better for Amy and Fred a little bit.
Right. That's funny. All right. And Jacob, you had kind of a bold prediction with Buhl and South Fremont possibly at that 3A state tournament. Troy wants to know, yo, Jake, what do you want to bet on that 3A title?
Let me get the official Buhl, the email to Idaho Sports. If they don't send it, I can't make any bets, Troy.
Got to get that official lineup card.
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
right?
So it's really on Fred. I'll bet with Troy any day of the week, but
right. All right. Well, I think we kind of reached the end of the line here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in again to the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast. We love bringing this to you every week. Those of you that can join us live, and I know so many people go back the next day or even the day after and check out the content. You can watch a replay of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account. If you're more of an audio person as well, you can go to your favorite podcast app, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, etc., and subscribe to the Mat Chat Prepcast there and download it that way. You can also listen to the Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, you'll see a little tab that says Game Stream, or there is a Game Streams one, but there's also one that says Prepcasts, and from there there's a drop-down menu. You click on the Mat Chat Prepcast, and there's a little player right there on the page where you can listen to as well. So big thanks to everybody as you head out the door. Matthew says, great cast, gentlemen. Thank you. Brian Skellinger, thanks. Thank you, Brian. Troy says, this is my favorite part, the end of the show where everybody heaps praise upon us. This is what I came for. Troy, you guys are awesome. Thanks for this. Chelsea, love wrestling. Thanks for the updates. Chelsea had a great comment earlier too. I wanted to find, she said, good job, Idaho kiddos. Competing against all of these great out-of-state opponents week in, week out. And I'm inclined to agree. John says, thanks guys. Thank you, John. Really appreciate you tuning in. Matt, great work. And I just want to throw everybody's comments up here, not because I love hearing the praise, but because I want everybody to feel like their comments were shared. Heart emoji from David and Michaela. Thank you, everybody. This is really what it's all about is you, the wrestling fans, the wrestling community, everything we're doing, our rankings on IdahoSports.com, this weekly Prepcast, all of our great coverage that Al provides, your great written in-depth pieces and all the data that Al, unearths every week. It's all for you, the wrestling fans. So thank you. And we'll continue to do it. We'll see you back here next week. We should be back to Tuesdays now. I don't think I have any more basketball games that can conflict with the schedule. So should be next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. For Al, Jacob, and Brian, I'm Brandon Bainey, and we'll see you next time on the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on Idaho